Hey everyone, welcome back to another video for this series. Thank you so much if you watched the last video, which was about installing and configuring Manage Engine OP Manager. That was so much fun, and I hope to have even more fun in this one, where we'll be implementing DNSSEC for this particular lab. So what we're going to be doing is preparing the DNS setup for the DNSSEC, configuring the DNSSEC and customizing it as well. So we'll be looking specifically to create a zone, some sample resource records, some non-authoritative DNS servers, the secondary domain controller, DNS key to trust anchors, and a few other things as well. So let's actually go ahead and get started with the first exercise. All right, so for our first exercise, we're going to be preparing the DNS setup for DNSSEC. So the domain name security, the domain name system security extensions, or DNSSEC, is a set of extensions that add an additional layer of security on a DNS server by enabling responses sent to DNS clients or resolvers to be validated. Now, when the DNS resolver queries the zone that is signed by DNSSEC, the authenticity and integrity of its responses are ensured with the use of security keys. So for this exercise, I'm going to be preparing the requirements to successfully test the DNSSEC on a Windows Server OS by creating a new zone. Now, we're going to also be adding some resource records as well, installing a non-authoritative DNS server, and also lastly, installing a secondary domain controller as well. So what I'm currently looking for is the server management. Let's see. Oh, that's because I'm on the wrong server. There it is. All right, so we got the server manager up and running. So now, again, we're going to create a zone. So we can actually use a primary zone, right? And we can also, let's take a look here. There it is. Then the primary zone is the writable zone, right, in DNS. And to test the zone using the zone signing using DNSSEC, we actually keep the current configurations on the server safe. Let me maximize this, right? Need to create a new zone. We're going to create a new zone for testing purposes. So, and we're going to create it for the secure.practicelabs.com. So let's see. Just naturally. Okay, that's fine. Secure dynamic updates, and we can finish. All right, perfect. So now we'll notice in a moment, here it is. So the new zone with the name secure.practicelabs.com is now created. So we're going to keep this manager window open and create some sample resource records. So let's actually expand. Let's expand this here. Right. So now that we see here, same as parent folder, the start of authority, and the name server, right? So we're actually going to right click here, and we're going to do a new host. We're going to do to www. Right. Then we're going to add. Then we're going to do a secondary as well. All right, perfect. So now that we close those out, we're going to create a non-authoritative DNS server. So we're actually going to install and configure a new non-authoritative DNS server on the DMO1 server here. So I'm going to swivel over here. And the server is not going to be used for resolving names in the lab network, as it will not host any writable DNS zone. It will be used instead for storing DNSSEC keys from the DCO1 server that's hosting secure.practicelabs.com. All right, so let's take a look here. Let's actually open up PowerShell. Let's see, I love PowerShell. And these, what I like about it is it's not case sensitive. So let's first let's install rather the DNS on the DMO1 server with the command here. Okay. All right, perfect. So the PowerShell has confirmed here the success that the DNS was installed from DCO1. It's installed now on DMO1, right? So let's actually swivel back over to let me minimize this. Let's head back to the DNS here for Server Manager. All right, so let's actually click here. I'm going to take a look at the properties for the DNS. All right, perfect. So let's take a look at the forwarders tab, and we're actually going to do some editing. All right, so we're going to enter in the DNS that we created, the zone that we created from DCO1. All right, so now this sets the 0.1, the DCO1 server as the forwarder server, right? So DNS is actually going to attempt to resolve as it is here to its host name DCO1. It'll take just a few moments, as you can see here, and you don't need to necessarily wait for the name to be resolved to its IP address. So just going to click OK here so you can get out. All right, so now I'm actually going to keep this window open so we can do a few more things, right? The next thing is going to be creating a secondary domain controller. So I'm going to create a secondary domain controller that will be used to demonstrate how DNSSEC keys are transferred between DNS servers that are running as domain controllers. So actually to display that, I'm going to swivel over to this device here. Let's open up the command prompt. All right, so we're going to run this command. Got to spell first. Perfect. And of course, now whenever I remember when I enter a password in any CLI, including Windows or Kali Linux, usually the password is not going to visibly show, but it's still going to enter it as shown here, right? So a new PowerShell window opens, which is fine. So this is the PS prompt, the PowerShell prompt, to install the Active Directory domain services. So we're going to do this command here, right? All right, perfect. So it may take a while for the domain services to be installed, but after they install, should be prompted with a success message similar to prior before. All right, so now you can see here that I've successfully installed the AD domain services support files. So now we're just going to install a secondary domain controller for practicelab.com with this control here, or command rather. All right, so I'm just waiting while the secondary domain controller is being installed. Typically, it takes a few moments to finish, but after the install is finished, the computer normally restarts, and then we're going to be because it restarts automatically. I'll have to let it restart and then finish the initialization of the additional domain controller role. So the server has now restarted after successfully installing, right? So now we're able to move forward with configuring the DNSSEC, right? So it's on a zone, right? And it's easy and straightforward as far as the process using the DNS manager. It's one of the most important settings for assigning the zone. that is provided by the DNSSEC wizard. So what I'm about to do now is enable the DNSSEC on the secure.practicelab.com zone. So it distributes the keys with the use of the trust anchors among servers and verifying the configuration. So let me actually touch on also what a trust anchor is. So it's a public key that is associated with the specific zone that's been protected with DNSSEC. So when distributed among DNS servers, the trust anchors form a chain of trust that's useful for validating the DNSSEC data among servers. So let's get started with actually first signing the zone using default settings, right? So let's actually swivel back over to DCO1 and the DNS manager. Okay, let's take a look here. And let's take a look at these here. Let's click. All right, perfect. So let me actually click here. Actually, you know what? I'll just click here instead. All right, let's take a look at the DNSSEC so we can sign the zone. All right. So let's click there. And we're actually going to use the default settings to sign the zone, as I just mentioned. And this is just a summary, right, about the sign zone, which everything is fine. We're in a lab. And then I'm going to hit finish so we can close out the wizard. All right. Still, now we may not see it change right away, but I'm just going to right click on the secure labs here to refresh it. All right, there we go. Perfect. So now that we see the updated contents of the secure zone showing a padlock also right here, that's appended to the zone folder. So similarly, the resource records have been further expanded here to show resource records that are signed by DNSSEC, right? So this allows us to move on to the next task, which is going to be distributing the trust anchors to a non-authoritative DNS server. So earlier in the video, I installed and configured a non-authoritative DNS server on DMO1, right? So the purpose of setting up a non-authoritative DNS server is to test the distribution of DNSSEC keys, also called a trust anchor, right? As I mentioned. So among the DNS servers, such as a non-authoritative DNS server and a domain controller that's running as a DNS server, a trust anchor is a set of keys that protect a DNS server, just as a set of keys would protect your home, so to speak, right? As it signs the zone and validates the DNS responses to DNSSEC-aware client computers, we have to share a trust anchor among DNS servers, right? And we're going to do that with a few steps here. So I'm actually going to open up File Explorer, and we're going to, let's see, go to the local disk, and let's open this up here, scroll down. Here, there we go. Then we should see DNS. There it is. All right, perfect. There it is. Use it down at the bottom. All right, perfect. So now that we're in advanced, let's see, we're in sharing, advanced sharing. All right, then I'm going to share this folder naturally, of course. But then let's see, apply. Probably shouldn't have done that, but because it's the lab. So I'm just going to save the settings here. And I'm just going to close the DNS properties dialog box. I'm just going to get out of the File Explorer. So now I'm actually going to swivel over to DMO1, right? So now we're in the DNS manager, right? So I'm actually going to expand this. All right, so let's take a look at the trust points as well. Nothing there, but we're going to do some other things here. Let's see, we're going to import the DNSSEC key naturally, right? And it's actually, I'll just find it quicker to just put in what we're looking for versus browsing and taking time to kind of search for it. Perfect. Now, as we can see, it populates here. So now I'm actually going to expand trust points. All right, then we can take a look here. Right. And I also want to point out that the contents of the secure folder right there, now they're displayed here. There are DNS keys imported right for the assigned domain on the authoritative server from DCO1. So I'm actually going to keep this open so we can actually start to verify the DNSSEC keys trust anchors. So now we distributed the DNS key trust anchor to the non-authoritative server, which is DMO1. We're going to now test if the trust anchor can be detected by the DNSSEC-aware clients using, in this lab, in particular, Windows 8 and higher versions. So we're going to use Win10 actually to detect the DNS key TAs on the Practice Labs network. So I'm actually going to swivel over here. All right, perfect. So let's go ahead and open up PowerShell, if I could spell. All right, I also want to note that the user account control policy, it just mandates the elevated rights that are required to run certain command line tools, which is why I run as administrator. So let's actually go ahead and see if we can detect it. Let's see. All right, let's see. Perfect. There we go. So as we can see, it detects and lists the DNS key trust anchors whenever it's found on the network, right? So now that they're listed, we're going to distribute the trust anchors to a secondary domain controller. So typically I'm going to swivel over here while I'm talking, but typically the DNSSEC keys are copied to other DNS servers for redundancy, and they create an island of trust between the DNS servers that host assigned DNS zone. So now we're going to replicate the DNSSEC trust anchors to a secondary domain controller that I previously configured. So distribute the TAs to the secondary domain controller. We're going to do a few things. Actually going to click here, and then let's actually take a look at the properties for the DNSSEC. All right, perfect. And of course, naturally, we're going to click on the trust anchor. So we're going to enable the distribution because that's what we're trying to do, right? All right, perfect. Yes, of course. Of course, we want that. All right, so now that we confirmed the successful configuration of the DNSSEC parameters, I'm going to do a few more things. I'm actually going to swivel over to SAO1, right? And let's go to the DNS menu for the server. All right, so let's actually expand this a bit. All right, let's see here. Should pop it in a second. Okay, what I'm looking for, usually the trust point should have the should have some additional folders here. Okay. Let's actually refresh this here. All right, so let's fix this here. All right, so we finally fixed it. And just to give a very, very quick tidbit, because I don't like veering off the subject matter, what I did was I was able to let's see, what was it here? It was here, and I went here, then I restarted the DNS server. All right, so now I was able to have it populate what it needed to within the folder. But nonetheless, we can move forward. All right, so let's actually take a look at the secure folder, right? So I want to note also that the DNS key trust anchors are present on the secondary domain controller of practicelabs.com. So similarly, in the DNS manager window here, let's see, we take a look at the forward lookup zones also, right? Let's see, and then this one here. We see the replicated resource records from secure.practicelab.com from that zone from DCO1, right? So now that we know this and we see this, we're going to query a signed zone without DNSSEC validation required. So the secure.practicelabs.com zone has been signed with DNSSEC. So now I'm going to test if a signed zone can be queried without the DNSSEC validation. So to query that, I'm just actually going to swivel over to Win10. Go here. And the PowerShell is still open, so we're good there. So let's do that with this. Similar command to before, actually. You know what? Should take the lazy way. And let's do that. Let's see. Actually, I'm going to need this. Looks good. Actually, I know it's not case sensitive, but it looks better to me. I'm just checking the command to make sure everything is proper. Because I tend to move too fast and then it'll have some hiccups and that'll throw off typically everything. Let's see. Yeah, I knew it. That's fine. That's an easy fix. There it is. Perfect. All right, so now we see the results of the resolve DNS name query, right? And we want to also note that the workstation shows a successful response as the DNSSEC trust anchors are successfully in place in our labs network. So now to verify that the DNSSEC validation is not required, we're actually going to do another command here. So let's do that. All right, perfect. So since no result is given, it means that there is a policy for DNSSEC validation. All right. So that means that we're gonna move forward with configuring the support for DNSSEC in a group policy object. So then NRPT, which is if you notice this here, that's the name resolution policy table. So it's used to require DNSSEC validation when the DNSSEC aware client queries the DNS server, which is what we've done, right? So the NRPT is configurable via the local GPO for local testing or domain GPO for domain environment. So in this task, I'm actually going to configure a domain-based GPO to require DNSSEC validation to query the signed secure.practicelab.com zone. So now to configure that, I'm actually going to swivel over to DCO1. I'm actually going to actually minimize this so we can get back here. We can take a look at the group policy management. Let's see here. All right. Hey, Forrest. How you doing, buddy? All right, perfect. So let's take a look at the domains and the practice labs. Perfect. All right, so let's create a GPO in this domain group policy object. All right, and DNSSEC, of course. Let's do that. All right, so now should notice. All right, perfect. So now that we see that the DNS GPO is now listed under the practicelabs.com node. So I'm just going to right click here so we can do some editing. All right. Let me open this up a bit more. So now let's take a look at the computer configurations, policies. Of course, naturally the window settings, right? And NRPT, well, NRP at this point, right? So let's take a look at the create rules, right? So which part of the name space does this rule apply? That's an interesting question, right? Let's actually, the suffix is fine. And naturally, we're going to continue with secure.practicelabs.com. All right, perfect. So now we're going to enable, of course, the DNSSEC rule, well, DNSSEC in this rule rather. And now we're also going to require DNS clients to check that name and address data has been validated by the server, right? So now we're fine with everything. So we can actually create and we can actually scroll down here and let's see, select here. can actually hit apply, so it can apply to that particular one. All right. Does this say the full name? Why does it have a dot from? Okay, nonetheless, just gonna move along here. All right, so now let me close this out. All right, so close this out too. So let's go to the PowerShell, check a few things. Naturally, of course, whenever you change a policy, we want to make sure it's updated. Group policy, GPU's group policy, then update. I'm gonna force it to update. It doesn't take long. Yep, there it is. And now we want to get to the DNS client NRPT policy that we've just configured as well. So perfect. So let's actually look for the DNSSEC validation that's required. Here it is. It's true. Perfect. All right, that's fine. So now we're going to query a signed zone with DNSSEC validation required, right? Which is here. Now, after we now set up a domain-based GPO for DNSSEC validation, and we're going to run a query to resolve a resource record, or you know, depending on your acronyms, on the signed secure.practicelab.com zone. So there's to query a signed zone with DNSSEC validation, we're going to actually swivel over back to Win10, and we're going to naturally update this policy, right? So let's type. I misspelled it, yeah. Going too fast. That's why I like to take my time. In my head, I wanted to do get update, but I know it's a group policy update. And the next command also, because I just used the get command for the second command of the last server, and I'm also going to have to use it for this one. Yep. My brain got confused. Then tell it which policy. And there it is. All right, perfect. So now we want to notice that the client policy is detected by Win10, right? So and a validation required is also true here, right? So now we're going to resolve the DNS name with DNSSEC validation configured. So we're going to enter in another command. I believe, I'm not sure if we use this command on this. So I'll just do it myself. Perfect. So there's really, I mean, and I know this you typically would take a bit more research to take a look at, you know, a bit slowed down version, but I've done this before. So I already know there's no difference between my earlier results and the resolved DNS name. So this is because a valid trust anchor is present on the DMO1 server, which is here, right? So the query is successful even if this validation is required because it's been completed earlier via the group policy object. So I'm actually going to attempt to resolve some resource records within the secure.practicelab.com zone. So I'm going to do it. I just got to add a few things here. Start up here. Looks good. Perfect. So we start up here. What am I just like my windows as big as possible, but nonetheless. So we start up there. We take a look through. we'll notice that the host record, the www, let's see here. Well, nonetheless, the host record that we created earlier, as far as details about the host record, is discovered here. We can also do www2. Actually, here it is. This is what I created earlier, the DNSSEC zones. And then if I also run the same command with the www2, it'll show my results there. Let's see. Okay. Just two W's. Got a one, I should have put 3. There it is. All right, perfect. So now we can move on to our next exercise here. So now we're going to be customizing our DNSSEC. So we want to understand that the DNSSEC wizard, it provides a set of default settings, right, for signing a zone. So in a similar way, we can sign a zone using customized settings by using the DNSSEC feature of the DNS manager. So for example, a change in the security key on DC01, which is where the host is for secure.practicelab.com zone, it will create a mismatch along the DNS servers that hold a copy of the trust anchor, right? The trust key. So therefore, the new security key needs to be updated on all the servers to enable validation. So I'm going to unsign the secure.practicelab.com zone and then re-sign it using custom parameters. So you're going to notice, or I'm going to notice, the effect of the re-signed DNS zone on the other servers that hold copies of the DNSSEC keys or the trust anchors from the first signing, right? So first, let's unsign the DNS, let's unsign the secure zone router. So let's actually take a look at the DNS manager. I think I have it here for policy. There it is. Hey, buddy. All right, so let's actually take a look at here, DNSSEC. Let's unsign it. Of course. Perfect. And let's actually refresh here. Restart. Okay. Now if we go back, let's see, refresh. Perfect. Now we see all of those additional resource records are now gone, right? So we have the updated records list for the secure.practicelab.com zone, which makes this now a regular DNS zone, right? So now we're going to re-sign the secure.practicelab.com with custom parameters. So normally to sign a zone with customized keys, you define the key master parameters and the new keys. So now we're just going to sign the secure.practicelab.com zone again using custom keys. Therefore, we have to delete the existing key from other servers and specify a new key. So to design a zone with a custom key, I'm actually going to, let's see. Let's sign the zone like we did before, right? And then let's see, yep, customize. All right, so now we're just going to ensure that this is the master key. That's a-okay. All right, because the required setting, this is a required setting because the zone signing will be carried out on DC01 on this particular server. So we're good there. So now we can actually just hit next here, and we're actually going to remove because we're coming up with our own. All right, we're coming up with our own. Naturally, because there's nothing there, we're going to have to add so we can start customizing. So now, let's see, what we're going to do is, let's see, we're going to change, let's see, the cryptic algorithm to, let's see, 512. Let's do that. And then we could change this to 4096. Yeah, let's do that. All right, perfect. Now, I want to also note that the stronger the cipher string, which is the key length bits here, the larger the overhead will be on the server to perform the encryption process. But I just wanted to note that. So now that we configured this and we've enabled it, we can go next. And then we can hit next again, naturally, right? And then we can hit next. Next. This is good. This is good. That's good. All right. Now it's just assigning the zone. All right. Perfect. Fairly quick. All right. So let's go ahead and refresh. Let's take a look here. Boom. Now that we have our resource records again for our customized key here. So our customized parameters rather. So now we have to update the trust points created earlier between DC01, DM01, and SA01. So let's actually take a look at the PowerShell here. And we're going to enter in the command we used before. So let's see. Perfect. So now to refresh the trust points that we previously configured for SA01, DMO1, we enter and let's see, we did that one again. And then we just change this to DMO1. Everything else is good, which it should be. Yep, there it is. All right, so perfect. So we're going to do this again. Okay. What's wrong with this one? There it is. Okay. All right, perfect. So now we can actually show, now that we verified the trust anchor availability on the 3 servers, now that we see that the trust anchors are present, now we can show failed and unsecured validation. So on a non-authoritative server, the DNSSEC keys must be copied manually to enable validation. So for now, I'm going to copy the keys onto DMO1 and test the validation on a non-authoritative DNS server, right? So let's see. Let's clear this out. All right. And then let's actually refresh. And I'm going to swivel over to Win10. See, got the PowerShell. Right, see resolve. We got a DMO1. We're good. Just want to start with WW first. All right. Okay. Note again, I got a failure, and this is because of automatic updating of trust anchors on a non-authoritative DNS, right? From DMO1, it's not supported. So this means that the trust anchor must be manually imported to the DMO1 server, right? So then I'm going to swivel over here, right? And let's actually open up PowerShell. Then let's do. There we go. Of course, we do. All right, perfect. So now the DNS trust anchor has been successfully removed, right? So now I'm just going to resolve a name after removing the trust anchor, right? So let's think. No, I did not. Okay, that's fine. Start that off. It's my own. Perfect. I love it. I love it. So now that the DNS name, right? Let me start here. So the DNS name, right? The name resolution, we're good to go there. All right, so let's see. All right. Let's do that here. Perfect. So now we notice that the unsecured DNS packet message that appears in Windows Shell, also on the last, let's see, it appears because the trust anchor on the DMO1 server was deleted here, but unless we're good here. So that's actually the end of this video. So just for implementing DNSSEC. So just for a brief recap, we prepared the DNS setup for DNSSEC. We configured the DNSSEC as well, and we also customized some things as well. But that's it for this video. Next video, we're going to be implementing the AD Federation services. This was so much fun. Hope to have even more fun in the next video. Stay curious, stay secure.